All right, hi, my name is Emlyn Smith, and I'm going to be going over training for Southern Americans. Just a little bit of culture slash background. Most of Southern Americans came from empires and indigenous people, such as the Incan Empire. The Spanish conquistadors and Europeans were ones that took over the land. Spain colonized more of the western part of South America, and Portugal colonized more of the eastern coast. And the only region that was not colonized by these two powers was the Guineas, which was colonized by Great Britain, the Netherlands, and France. And our Adam Dastrip 7.3 History and Culture of the Region is my cited source for this. Some data. The current population of South America is 439 million as of Monday, January 9th, 2023. So this is very current, up and coming information. Some of my data I had a little harder of a time finding updated information, but for that is what I did. South America population is equivalent to 5.53% of the total world population. As of 2019, there are 3.3 million Southern Americans living in the United States of America, and as of 2016, there are 4.5 million Southern America's workers that reside in Texas. And I used my same source for this, our Adam Dastrip 7.3 History and Culture of the Region, to get some of my data. Not all of it, though. Okay, so now we have some stereotypes for the Southern Americans. Some positive ones, or I felt were positive ones, is that they work really hard. This is also falls for I feel like Mexicans or Mexican Americans. They're seen or perceived as being really hard workers. People also assume that if you're from South America, you come from a really big family, which is not always the case. I feel like it is true a lot of the time, just based off the people I know, but it's not always the case. Sometimes Southern Americans only have a couple of kids, and that's it. Lots of people assume that you can cook really well or clean really well, especially compared to like white people or black people. That's just a stereotype, but that's not always the case. It's just a stereotype, but I think it's a positive thing being able to cook and clean really well. And Southern Americans are family oriented, which I feel like also is true. They're really into their family, they're really into their culture, but that's not the case for everybody, obviously, because it's a stereotype. Some negative stereotypes are people assume that you speak Spanish just based off of where your heritage is from. People assume that you have an accent if you're from South America or that you have a temper. People are quick to assume that you're Mexican, even if you come from somewhere in South America, which I am one to be guilty for that. Thinking that someone is Mexican, but really they're from a Southern American region. And people also assume that you're less educated if you come from South America, which is not entirely the case at all. So, communication in the workplace. Southern Americans are really good communicators that use a style that is passive, indirect, and provides high context. Communicators are more non-direct and passive, as they do not want to offend the person that they are speaking to, and they're very context rich in expressing what they are saying. So non-direct and passive is they just kind of want to they don't fully get to the point when they tell you something if they feel like it's going to offend you. But when they are telling, but they do provide high context when it's something that they do want to tell you. Like, for an example, let's say an American girl says to her dad, "I just walked the dog for us." Well, that's all that she's going to say about that. But if you're from South America, it's not going to be the same case. They're going to say stuff like, "Oh, I walked the dog. It took me 10 minutes. I walked them to the park. I saw a bird along the way and I waved at some person and then I came back." Like, they're going to tell more of a story whenever they're trying to tell you something that happened to them. But when it comes to more sensitive subjects, they're more passive and indirect. And my source here is Catala Daniel Latino Culture Communication Style. So some verbal and nonverbal messages. Nonverbal is the distance, excuse me, that they keep between each other is 8 to 18 inches. They don't like to go anything closer than that. They pucker their lips as a way of communicating non-verbally, saying that over there, him over there. They smile and kind of nod at someone to say check or him or her out, which that one I feel like we do in America, smiling at someone and kind of nodding at them and just say check this person out, but we don't really pucker our lips. They smile a lot whenever they're engaging in conversation just because they're really friendly people. It's common for women. I didn't include this part either, but like it's also common for men, but mostly with women to kiss each other or when they're saying hello on the cheek, not on the mouth. And kind of grabbing each other when they talk and being close to each other and personable whenever it's someone that they know. If they don't know, they want to keep that 8 to 18 inches, but when it's someone that they do know, they're very close and they're very touchy when they're with each other. They'll look into the eyes of the person whom they are speaking, but only in a fleeting way, so it's kind of quick. They don't just stare at you the whole time they're having a conversation. And I'll talk about this a little bit more, but they're never on time, so don't be offended by that. Some verbal stuff is that they like to use the word friend a lot to address somebody. In South America, they might say coche or pana, or in Central America, they might say pasiero or vato, just depending on the region or the country. They don't use the word stupid. That's very offensive. You would say probably to address someone or say someone is stupid, you would call them an idiota. And if you call them that, that's like really offensive. You don't do that. They also speak very expressive and with lots of emotion, and they're a bit more boisterous when they speak. They're very passionate people, and they're very passionate speakers as well. Some interpersonal strategies and skills is that they use lots of empathy when they communicate with each other. They're very friendly and personable people. They're active listeners. They favor teamwork. They favor teamwork more in the sense of with friendships rather than in the workplace, which I will discuss in the next slide. But they do favor teamwork when helping out a friend. And they're participative and humane-oriented leadership behaviors. And obedience is a high value that they have in Latin America. Some concepts of working in teams. Southern American firms are managed like family. They prefer to depend on someone closer to the center of the organization. So kind of the whole thing that you want to focus on this slide is the sentence right here that Southern Americans value hierarchy rather than working in teams. They really like to speak to the boss when they want to address someone. If they have a question about something, they want to speak to the boss. They don't want to speak to a fellow coworker or employee. Behaving in other way could be interpreted as offensive and could have disciplinary consequences. And they prefer managerial style in which the senior executive is the one that makes decisions, resolves conflicts and confrontations, and accept the sort of manager as a mediator between parties in a conflict. The relevant customs and traditions is that they're very friendly when they speak to each other, and they like to make friends with the people that they're with in the workplace. So speaking to someone, you want to just be very friendly with them and very nice. They'll make friends off of just one conversation with you. They like working in fast-paced work environments. They value home tradition over work tradition more. If they have something going at home, they want to be at home on time for that. If they are potentially celebrating something, they want to be home for that. Addressing them by their formal title is very important, showing warmth and expression. Dressing formally and being late is a normal occurrence. If you're there like 30 minutes late, they're not going to be mad at you if you're 30 minutes late for a meeting because a lot of people do it. My cited sources are Catala, Daniel, and Latino communication style, Cruz, differences in nonverbal styles between cultures, Hispanic workers in the United States, Harvith, Richard, 10 Things in Latin Culture, How Cultures Affect Practices, Leadership in Latin America, 7.3, Culture of Style and Religion.